Mr. Wade here and Mrs. Crime. Today's unfortunate story is on a few graves out here at the Old City Cemetery out here in Vancouver, Washington. Yes, Vancouver. Me and Mrs. Crime have been out here numerous times. But Mr. Wade has been doing some research and I came across a few headstones that I would like to bring you guys out here to hear the unfortunate stories. Now, this is a very old cemetery and I drove a distance to come here as usual because I like to bring the stories to you guys. So if you haven't already did it, go ahead and subscribe. If you haven't already did it, go ahead and click that like button. A lot more coming from Tombstone Whispers. Stay tuned. You know, it's funny, no matter what cemetery I go to, or we go to, me and Mrs. Crime, there are always people exercising through a cemetery. Now, you would think that people don't go to cemeteries because of the haunting factor, or maybe they don't have a loved one out there, but people actually come through here exercising. So, it just shows you that it can be a quaint, quiet place, maybe a little too quiet, but people do exercise through here. Wow. Stay tuned. Now, who we're looking for is a Jeannie Ann Baxter. Her story goes like this. Hopefully Mr. Wade finds her grave. I'm looking. But know that her story starts like this. She was a housewife. She'd been married for approximately, at the time, a few years. Now, I would say longer than a few years, take that back. She was married a while. Now, what happened was, they have her listed as a murder victim or an assassination. They don't know what led up to it. They just having the assumption that maybe she was caught up in a time when her husband, who was actually blamed for the murder because he was in the house when it took place, saying that he had an insane moment, that he lost his mind, that's why he did it. There were never no resolution to what happened. And on her headstone, it reads a certain phrase that I'm going to tell you in a little bit once we find her actual headstone. Now, Mr. Wade has an actual photo of the actual headstone, the upright headstone, and I should be able to find it because you know Mr. Wade is bad at finding headstones. And when I don't find it, boy, do I get pissed off. But like I'm saying, we're out here to find certain graves, headstones that Mr. Wade did his research on and then found some unfortunate stories. And we're out here at Old City Cemetery. For those of you that might have fast forwarded up to this point, funny story. Quick funny story. I'm looking for Miss Baxter, right? To complete this story on what happened to her. And Mr. Wade lost his actual piece of paper that has all the names and everything that I was using to make this story. Yeah, this is my trusty notes. Wow, I found them. Stay tuned. So this is the grave of Lucretia Virginia Jeannie Anderson Baxter, born 1865, died 1896 at the age of 30, actually murdered by her husband. This is the actual grave. And the inscribed says, "Tis, but the casket lies here, the gem that filled, it sparkles yet." Wow. So she married Mr. George Baxter in 1883. And like I said, they have her down as an assassination. They suspect that it was the husband that did it. They're saying he had an insane moment. And this is the grave of Mrs. Baxter. One that was murdered. And no story behind it. This is the actual plot of Miss Baxter, and this is her children. George is not her husband. This is her children that she's buried with. Her husband is buried totally different cemetery across Portland. And George right here, he died at the age of 1 of scarred lung tissue issues. And her daughter, a little bit bigger here, she died of spinal trouble at 10 years old. So she died of spinal trouble. He died of lung issues. And this is the mom that was murdered by their father, her husband. Wow. I hope you guys enjoyed the unfortunate story of Miss Lucretia. It shows you back then of how things could happen, and there's never no solvement to it. Her husband was the actual suspect, and as you saw, her and her 2 kids are in the same plantation. Her husband is way off somewhere else, way off in Portland, and I think he did it. But obviously, if he's out there, either he got let go on parole, probation, or maybe they didn't charge him for it because there was no proof of it. But in my mind, Mr. Wade's mind, he's the murderer. But unfortunate story of her and her 2 children. One died at 1, one died at 10. Wow. So a lot more coming from Tombstone Whispers. I'm Mr. Wade and Mrs. Crime. Until then, we bring it to you.